Today, we're talking about how to get unstuck in midlife, not with a giant life overhaul, but with tiny pivots, new habits, and real momentum. If you've been living in someday I'll change careers, someday I'll feel confident, someday I'll actually do the thing I keep thinking about, this episode is for you. Welcome to How to Lose the Weight, the podcast for women ready to stop waiting for someday and live life now. I'm your host, Holly Toscanini, and I'm here to help you break free from perfectionism, self-doubt, and the someday mindset. Together, we'll dive into real conversations about self-trust, empowerment, and living authentically. If you're ready to reconnect with your intuition and step into your power, you're in the right place. Let's lose the weight and start living fully right now. Welcome back to How to Lose the Weight. I'm your host, Holly Toscanini. And today, we're talking about that magical day, someday. Someday I'll write the book. Someday I'll leave this job. Someday I'll start dating again. Someday I'll launch my business and take that class, try that hobby someday. If someday had a closet, half of your dreams would still be hanging in there with the tag still on. And listen, I get it. For years, I lived in someday too. Someday when my body looked different. Someday when I had more time. Someday when I wasn't so tired, so scared, so busy, uncertain. You can fill in your own list. What finally motivated and moved me out of that holding pattern wasn't a giant leap. It wasn't quitting everything, moving to a cabin in the woods and reinventing my life overnight. It was tiny pivots. Small, almost boring decisions that over time quietly changed everything. Now, this episode is about those tiny pivots. The one email, the one no, the one messy yes, the one 10-second decision that moves you just an inch closer to the life you say you want. Now, if you're listening to this thinking, I'll change after the holidays, in January, after this project is done, after this birthday, this episode is for you because I'm not here to push you into a massive life overhaul. I'm here to help you see that you don't need massive change. You just need a little movement. We're going to talk about why you feel stuck in someday mode, how micro decisions actually create the biggest shifts, the real reasons you keep waiting, and a simple way to decide what's my next tiny pivot. And then at the end, I'm going to invite you to take my 5-minute midlife confidence quiz so you can see exactly where you are in your reinvention journey and what your next aligned step could be. So take a breath. You don't have to have a whole future planned out right now. We're just going to focus on your next inch forward. Let's start with why someday feels so safe and so expensive at the very same time. Let's be honest. Someday is incredibly comforting. It lets you want things without having to risk anything. You get to say, I'm not giving up on my dreams, but you also don't have to take the uncomfortable action it takes to get there. You can be the woman who wants to start her business, the woman who wants to leave her job, or the woman who even wants to write the book, take the trip, start the podcast, whatever, without facing rejection, failure, judgment, change, or any discomfort. Someday is like emotional layaway. You get to put your dreams aside and tell yourself you'll pick them up later when life calms down. Except life rarely calms down. It just reshuffles the chaos. And if you're in midlife, you know this. You thought things would slow down when your kids got older. Then your parents needed more support. Then work ramped up. And then your body started requiring actual maintenance meetings. Then life did what life does, right? Curveballs, loss, transition. And quietly, your someday turned into not yet, which turned into maybe later, which turned into, well, that ship has probably sailed. Here's a moment I remember clearly. I was sitting in my kitchen at the table with a large cup of coffee, scrolling through something online about reinventing your life. And I had this thought, if I keep waiting for the perfect time, I'm going to spend the rest of my life thinking about my dreams instead of living them. It wasn't dramatic, no violins, no epiphany montage. It was just I don't know, honest. And that honesty hurt a little. Maybe you've had your own version of that. You catch yourself saying someday and realize you've been saying it for years. Someday is cozy. Someday is safe. Someday is also a very slow way we abandon ourselves. And I say that with so much compassion because I've been there. If you're in that place, please hear me. You're not lazy. You're not unmotivated. And you're not bad at follow through either. You're just scared, or maybe you're overwhelmed, or tired, or burned out, or I don't know, so used to putting other people's needs first that putting your own dreams on hold just feels normal. So we're not going to beat you up for living in someday. We're just going to ask, what would it look like to move from someday to today? Not with a huge leap, but with a small but very honest shift. That's where these tiny pivots come in. I'm going to tell you a little bit why tiny pivots matter more than big leaps do. It's because we tend to fetishize big change, big dramatic change. I left my job with no plan and moved across the world. I lost 80 pounds in 6 months. I sold everything and started over. Those stories are flashy, and yes, they get engagement. They make great headlines. But most successful, sustainable reinvention, especially in midlife, just doesn't happen that way. It happens through boring, unsexy, tiny pivots. One honest conversation, one boundary, one email, one application submitted, one podcast episode recorded in your bedroom, one daily walk, one very brave no or equally brave yes. Tiny pivots don't look impressive from the outside, but they are incredibly powerful because, first, they respect your nervous system. They also build real confidence through evidence, not through hype. And they create momentum without blowing your life up. Turn I want to into I'm actually doing it. See, think about a plane. If you change its course by just a few degrees, it doesn't look like much at takeoff. But given enough time, that tiny shift lands you in a completely different place. Your life is the same. I can trace some of the biggest changes in my life back to these tiny pivots. The day I sent one email asking about a training program, or the first messy podcast episode I recorded when nobody knew who I was. The moment I said no to a work opportunity that just wasn't aligned, and yes to time for my own calling. The tiny, awkward steps I took to listen to my intuition instead of outsourcing all my decisions changed everything. But none of those moments look like life-changing decisions in the moment, right? They were just tiny pivots that stacked up. I want you to start seeing your own life in that same way. Not I have to reinvent everything, but what's one tiny pivot, tiny, my future self is going to thank me for. That's the energy we're going to build on. So ask yourself what actually keeps you from taking small steps. Because here's the tricky part. You know small steps matter. You've heard just take imperfect action 1,000 times, right? Done is better than perfect. So why aren't you doing it? This is where we need to get honest about what's really in the way, because it's usually not a lack of information. Some of the biggest blockers I see in midlife women are, first, all or nothing thinking. If it can't be big, perfect, or transformative, it sort of feels pointless. I mean, if I can't go to the gym 5 days a week, why bother moving at all? If I can't quit my job, why bother updating my LinkedIn or talking to anybody? If I can't write the whole book, what's the point of opening a blank document? All or nothing thinking just kills tiny pivots because tiny pivots don't look impressive. You've been taught to measure your life in these big, grand gestures, not small acts of self-loyalty. See? Then there's fear of disappointment. Tiny pivots mean you're admitting you care. You're saying, this matters to me. And when something matters, there's risk. If I try, what if it doesn't work? What if I can't stick with it? What if I'm too old, too late, too behind? You stay in someday because you'd rather live with theoretical hope than possible disappointment. And I get that. But here's the quiet cost. You're also never going to get to feel proud of yourself for trying. Next is identity fatigue. If you spent decades being the reliable one, the caretaker, the steady professional, the she can handle it person, it can feel destabilizing to do anything that even slightly challenges that. What will people think if I say no? If I change careers? If I start something new? What if I'm not as good at this new thing as I am at my old role? So you stay in roles that fit while shrinking around the edges of yourself. Tiny pivots threaten that known identity, which is why we often avoid them, even when we know they're the right thing to do. Next is overwhelm and decision fatigue. You're balancing a lot. Your brain is tired and you don't have endless decision making energy. So when you look at something you want to change, your mind doesn't see one tiny pivot. It sees a 47-step project plan and immediately logs out, which is why your tiny pivot has to be ridiculously small and crystal clear. And we're going to fix that right now. The tiny pivot framework is what we're going to talk about next. So let's make this simple and usable. I want to give you a framework you can use anytime you feel stuck in someday and you want to move into today without overwhelming yourself. We're going to call it the next inch method, okay? So the first step is going to be name the someday. Ask yourself, what's the thing I keep saying I'm going to do someday? And then say it just plain. Someday I want to change careers. Someday I want to lead this relationship. Someday I want to start painting again. Someday I want to move. Someday I want to feel at home in my body. Pick one. You can have a whole list, but for this exercise, choose just one. Step 2, shrink that big goal into a single 1-inch step. So ask, if that's the mile, what's the 1 inch in that direction? Not the whole path, just the next inch. Some examples might be, someday I want to change careers. The next inch could be update the headline on your LinkedIn page or ask one person how they got into a field that you're curious about. Someday, I want to write a book. The next inch, open a document and write just one messy page about why this book really matters to you. Someday, I want to feel stronger or more confident in my body. The next inch could be put on your shoes and walk for 10 minutes after lunch. Not 10,000 steps, just 10 minutes. Someday, I want to set better boundaries. The next inch could be, let me get back to you, instead of an automatic yes. Tiny, specific, measurable. A little uncomfortable, but certainly not overwhelming. 3, make it real and make it time-bound. So ask, when will I take this tiny pivot? Not in theory, not in January, not after the holidays. Pick something like tonight after dinner, or tomorrow at 10 a.m., or Saturday morning when I'm drinking my coffee. And then either write it down or put it in your calendar, or just even better, tell somebody you trust, because you're not promising to become a new person. You're just committing to trying one new thing, moving 1 inch forward. Then celebrate that inch like it's a mile. This is the part we skip, and it matters. After you take that tiny pivot, pause and acknowledge it. I actually did that. I sent the scary email. I said no when normally I would have said yes. I took a walk instead of staring at my phone for 10 minutes. Let yourself feel even a flicker of pride. Your brain needs to register, when I act in alignment with myself, it feels good. It feels like relief. It feels like integrity. And that's how you build momentum, not by shaming yourself into bigger and bigger moves, but by letting the smallest moves matter. So now let's bring this home. Let's slow this down and make it real for you right now. If you're listening while you're driving, walking, folding laundry, just mentally walk through this with me. But if you're somewhere where you can, grab a pen and pause, even better. Ask yourself gently, where am I waiting for someday? Don't censor it. Don't talk yourself out of it. Just notice it. Is it your work, your creativity, your relationship, your body, your spiritual life, your boundaries? The next question is, if I were to move 1 inch toward that, what might that look like? And don't worry about whether it's a big enough move. Remember, we're not auditioning for a transformation reality show. Maybe your inch is just sending an email or throwing away one thing that makes you feel like your old self. Registering for a class, journaling honestly for 10 minutes, making a therapy or coaching inquiry, saying no to something that absolutely drains you. or saying yes to something that quietly lights you up inside. And if nothing comes to mind right now, that's okay. Your tiny pivot might simply be, tonight, I'm going to sit with myself for 5 minutes and ask, what do I really want in this next chapter of my life? Because that counts. You don't need to leap. You don't need to blow up your life. You just need to stop telling yourself the lie that someday is going to feel easier than today. Now, I want to close this episode by saying this as clearly as I possibly can. You, my friend, are not behind. There is no secret calendar where you were supposed to have everything figured out by 45, 50, 60, or more. There's only now. And now is always available. You don't need a dramatic life overhaul. You don't need to burn everything down by January 1st. You don't need to wait for someday. You just need one tiny pivot that honors who you are right now and who you are becoming. Now, if this episode stirred something in you, and if you're feeling that mix of, oh, wow, that's me, and I have no idea where to start, I've created 2 simple tools to support you. First, the 5-minute Midlife Confidence Quiz. If you're wondering, where am I in this whole reinvention journey anyway, I want you to start here. The 5-minute Midlife Confidence Quiz is a short, thoughtful quiz that helps you see where you are right now on your path from self-doubt and someday to self-trust, confidence, and aligned action. When you take it, you'll discover which phase of awakening you might be in. Maybe you're the awakening woman. You're just starting to see how much of your life has been built around everybody else's rules. Or you could be the inner critic warrior. This means you're ready to stop letting that harsh inner voice run the show. You could be the intuitive seeker. You feel those inner nudges and you're learning to trust and follow them. Or maybe you're the body reclamation rebel. You are done being at war with your body and ready to make it your ally. Or you could be the reinvention-ready woman. You can feel your next chapter calling and you're ready for support to step into it. Each one of these results comes with a personalized confidence plan, so you're not just inspired, you know what your next aligned step could be. You could take the quiz in the show notes or go to my website, hollytoscanini.com. Next, the Intuitive Pivot Planner. Once you have a sense of where you are, the next question is, okay, how do I actually do this? That's where my Intuitive Pivot Planner comes in. It is a simple, free 3-step guide designed to help you get honest about what's really keeping you stuck, reconnect with what you actually want, not what you think you should want, and take your first intuitive, imperfect action without needing a 10-step plan or a perfect timeline. It's for those moments when you can feel a pivot calling you, but you're overwhelmed, overthinking, or just afraid to take that next step. You can also grab the Intuitive Pivot Planner in the show notes or at my website, hollytoscanini.com. Think of the quiz as your clarity. Where am I right now? And the Intuitive Pivot Planner as your movement. What's my next tiny pivot? If this episode, resonated with you, if it felt like you, I'd love for you to share it with a friend who maybe is a little stuck in their head, in their someday, and needs to hear that tiny pivots count. And if you do take a tiny pivot because of this conversation, please send me a message and tell me what it was. Truly, I love hearing those stories. You don't have to wait until you feel ready. You don't have to wait for the new year. You don't have to wait for your someday. You can take one small step today, and then another, and then another. That's how reinvention really happens. Until next time, trust yourself. Choose your next 1-inch forward step, and remember, there's nothing left to wait for. Thank you for now. See you next time. Thank you for tuning in to How to Lose the Weight. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if you found value in this episode, I'd love it if you could leave a review. It really helps the show reach more women like you who are ready to step into their power. For more insights and inspiration, follow me on Instagram at Holly Toscanini or visit hollytoscanini.com. Until next time, remember, stop waiting and start living.